a trail. But this was quiet. Like rain falling in the dark. You don't realize how soaked you are until it's too late. And the worst part? I can't even say it was all his fault. Because if I'm honest, I crossed the line first. With my thoughts. With my longing. With my silence. So, if you're here for a clean ending, you won't find it. What you'll find is a woman unraveling. A marriage fraying. A secret that started small and swallowed me whole. Subscribe to Heartfelt Tales Unfold, because the story you're about to hear may echo something you've never said out loud. I'm 38, married for 12 years. 2 kids, both in school now. I used to think that once we got past the diapers and sleepless nights, things would feel lighter, easier. But what no one tells you is how heavy the silence becomes. How the quiet moments, the ones you used to crave, start to feel like you're drowning in air. My husband, David, he's not cruel. He's not violent. He's just gone. Even when he's right there. Always working. Always glued to a screen. Always rushing out before breakfast and coming home after the kids are already in bed. I stopped waiting for him. Stopped trying to connect. Stopped talking at all some days. Because what's the point of saying how you feel if the person you love doesn't even look up to hear it? I'd talk to myself while folding laundry. Hum to fill the space when setting the table. Stared too long in the mirror just to remember what my face looked like when someone actually looked at it. The house was always clean, but never warm, never loud, never full of life. Just this perfect shell where everything inside was fading. Then Mark moved in. David's cousin. 25, maybe 26. He lost his job, needed a place to crash for a while. Just until he got back on his feet. David didn't even ask me if it was okay. Just told me over dinner that Mark would be staying in the guest room. Said he'd hardly notice him. Funny, David hardly noticed anyone. But I noticed. Mark was different. He wasn't loud, but he was present. He'd ask questions. Listen to the answers. He'd say thank you after meals, notice when I wore something new, laugh at jokes I thought no one heard. He didn't treat me like I was invisible. And after so many years of being unseen, that felt like oxygen. He'd pass me in the hallway and smile. Not polite. Not forced. Real. And I'd smile back longer than I should have. It wasn't love. It wasn't lust either. Not at first. It was just attention. Kindness. But kindness is dangerous when you've been starved of it long enough. I found myself sitting a little closer on the couch, laughing a little louder when he was around, wearing mascara again. Nothing obvious. Nothing you could point to and say there it is. But it was happening. A shift. A pull. He looked at me differently. Not like someone's wife. Not like someone's mother. But like a woman. It started on a Thursday night. One of those long, quiet evenings where the house feels like it's holding its breath. The kids were asleep. The dishwasher was humming softly in the background. David was on the couch, beside me, phone in hand, scrolling as always. Mark walked in from the kitchen with a bowl of popcorn. Movie night? He asked, smiling like he meant it. I shrugged. Sure. David didn't even look up. Just muttered, yeah, whatever's on. We put on some forgettable film. But I don't remember the title. I only remember the way the couch dipped when Mark sat beside me, not too close. But close enough that I noticed. Close enough that I forgot the movie existed at all. Half an hour in, David was snoring. Head tilted back, phone still glowing in his hand. Mark reached over for the popcorn. His fingers brushed against mine. Just for a second. But I didn't move. Neither did he. I looked at him. He looked back. And I smiled. Not out of politeness. Not out of habit. But because something about that moment felt warm. It felt nice. He laughed softly and said, you know, I've never seen you laugh like that before. I didn't know what to say. So I laughed again, even though nothing was funny. My body reacted before my mind did. My shoulders relaxed. My breath slowed. And suddenly I felt awake. Like I'd been half asleep for years, and someone finally turned the lights on. He looked at me. Really looked. Then tilted his head slightly and said, "Did you do something different with your hair?" I hadn't. But I told him I did. Because it felt good to be noticed. He nodded, smiling. "It suits you." It was subtle. No touching. No flirting. Just noticing. But that's what made it dangerous. It didn't feel wrong. It felt like relief. Like fresh air in a room that had been closed too long. We sat there, not saying much, while David snored beside us. And the movie kept playing to no one. Then, just as the credits rolled, Mark turned to me and whispered, like he was afraid the silence might hear, "If he can't see you, maybe he doesn't deserve you." I didn't answer. I couldn't. Because in that moment, I wasn't sure if I agreed with him, or if I just wanted to. I didn't plan this. I didn't wake up one morning and decide to fall for someone I wasn't supposed to. I just wanted to feel seen. That's all. Not touched. Not taken. Just seen. I kept replaying that night in my head. The way he said it, "If he can't see you, maybe he doesn't deserve you." It echoed louder than anything my husband had said in months. Years, maybe. I wanted to brush it off, to pretend it didn't matter. But it did. It mattered too much. I started watching the clock more, waiting for the moment I'd hear Mark's footsteps in the hallway. Waiting for that soft knock on the cabinet, or the sound of the guest room door creaking open. I'd find myself looking for excuses to be near him. Offering coffee when I didn't need any. Lingering by the kitchen just a little too long. And every time I caught a glimpse of myself in the hallway mirror, I started fixing things. Hair. Lips. Clothes. Not much, just enough. A touch of mascara. A softer shirt. Things I used to do before I stopped being noticed. He wasn't doing anything wrong. Not really. He was kind. Present. That was enough to undo me. And in the quiet moments, when I was folding laundry alone, or standing in the shower with the water too hot, I'd think about him. Not in a way I'm proud of. But I did. Because he looked at me like I was alive. And I hadn't felt that in a long, long time. David hadn't touched me in months. Not a hand on the small of my back. Not a kiss that wasn't mechanical. Not even a glance that lingered. I used to cry in the bathroom. Silently, so the kids wouldn't hear. Curled up on the cold tile floor, trying to understand what I'd done wrong. Was I too much? Too tired? Too invisible? But Mark, he didn't look away. And that small fact kept me coming back to myself. I told myself it wasn't real. That I was imagining it. That I was lonely and making things up. But I also started noticing, when he was in the shower, and when he wasn't wearing a shirt, how his back curved when he bent over the sink. How he smiled when he thought no one was watching. And suddenly I was watching. All the time. I felt guilt. Real guilt. But it didn't stop me. It just made me quieter. Made me more careful. I'd hear his voice from down the hall, and my stomach would turn not with fear, but with something close to excitement. A thrill I hadn't felt since before my second child was born. I was a mother. A wife. I knew better. But I was also a woman. A starving one. And hunger has a way of making you forget the rules. It didn't all happen at once. It crept in. Soft. Slow. Like water finding cracks in stone. Mark started helping around the house more. Small things at first. Taking out the trash before I asked. Folding laundry in the living room while the TV played something no one was watching. Sweeping up crumbs after dinner. Not out of duty, out of presence. He noticed what needed to be done. And he did it. Quietly. Without asking for credit. Without making it feel like a favor. And I noticed him too. Not just in passing, but fully. He'd walk by and I'd feel it, like the air changed for just a second. Like something warm brushed against my skin. One evening I was rushing down the stairs. Didn't see the folded throw blanket on the step. My foot slipped. I gasped. And, before I hit the floor, he caught me. arms around my waist, his chest against mine, studying me, holding me. It only lasted a moment, but his hands didn't move right away. Neither did mine. We locked eyes, and for a second, it felt like the world paused. I pulled back, smiled too quickly, laughed it off, but I felt my skin burning where he touched me, and I swear, he felt it too. After that, we were alone more often. David was gone late. Always some meeting, some client, some reason to avoid the house. Mark would hang around the kitchen while I cooked, asking questions, offering to help. And I started letting him. He'd reach past me to grab a glass, stand behind me at the sink, close enough that I could feel the warmth of his breath. He'd work out in the backyard, shirt off, sweat glistening down his back. And I'd pretend I was checking on the kids, but really, I was just watching him move. It became a dance neither of us talked about, but both of us kept dancing. Then one night, David didn't come home. No call. Just a text around 8 p.m. Don't wait up. The kids were with my sister. The house was quiet. Too quiet. Mark was in the living room, feet propped up on the coffee table, glass of wine in his hand. I poured one for myself, sat on the other end of the couch. We didn't say much, just let the silence stretch. Some slow music played in the background. An old jazz playlist I forgot was still on. He looked at me, said softly, "Dance with me." I laughed. "Here." "Why not?" he said, and held out his hand. I don't know why I took it. Maybe because I was tired of being untouched. Maybe because I wanted to feel something other than invisible. He pulled me close, his hands at my waist, mine on his shoulders. We swayed, barefoot on the rug. No words, just breathing. I felt his hand slide gently to the small of my back, his fingers brushing the edge of my shirt. My heart was pounding, but I didn't step away. He leaned in, his forehead resting against mine. And in a whisper, so soft I almost didn't hear it, he said, "You don't have to keep pretending." My voice cracked. "We can't," but I didn't move. And he kissed me. And I didn't stop him. It happened fast, but also not fast at all. Like something that had been slowly catching fire for weeks and finally gave into the flames. The moment his lips met mine, I felt everything I'd been pretending not to feel. Every buried ache, every silent scream, every part of me that had been reaching, stretching, starving for something, someone, to hold me like I mattered. He didn't pull away, and I didn't push him. We stood there in the dim light of the living room, bodies pressed close, breathing in the same fragile rhythm. There were no words, just hands searching, remembering, asking questions we hadn't dared say out loud. My shirt hit the floor first, then his. Then everything else followed like it had always been meant to. It wasn't loud. It wasn't wild. It was slow, careful, like we both knew we were breaking something sacred, but neither of us could stop. He touched me like I was real. Like I wasn't just a title, wife, mother, provider, but a woman. Soft, wanting, wanted. I begged him not to stop. Whispered it against his shoulder, fingers curled against his back. And he didn't. He didn't stop. And God, I didn't want him to. It was everything I hadn't even realized I'd been missing. The warmth, the weight, the closeness, the feeling of being seen so fully, touched so deliberately, held like I was worth the ruin. And when it was over, when our breathing started to slow and the room fell back into stillness, I got up, walked to the bathroom, closed the door behind me, and stared at myself in the mirror. Hair messy, face flushed, body still trembling. I looked like someone else, like a woman who'd just rewritten her story in one irreversible chapter. And then my phone rang. I didn't even have to check. I knew. David. I stared at the screen, watched it light up, pulse with his name, watched it go dark again. And I just stood there naked, raw, holding the weight of what I'd done in my chest. I didn't answer. I didn't even reach for it. I just kept watching myself, my breath fogging the glass, my skin burning with guilt and something far more dangerous, something that still whispered, "You needed this. You're alive again." For the first time in years, I felt alive, and I hated myself for it. The next morning, the light felt too bright, the air too still, like the house itself knew what we'd done. I heard him in the kitchen, pouring coffee, humming softly, like it was just another morning. I didn't want to go downstairs, didn't want to see him, but I couldn't stay in my room forever. When I finally walked in, he looked up, smiled like nothing had changed. And maybe for him, nothing had. But for me, everything had cracked open. I couldn't meet his eyes, couldn't return the smile, could barely breathe. I mumbled something about the laundry, grabbed a glass of water I didn't want, and left the room. Later that evening, David came home. Early, for once. Carrying takeout, like some gesture of normalcy. He kissed me on the cheek. And I flinched. Not because I didn't want him to, but because it felt wrong. Like being touched by a stranger wearing my husband's skin. Mark was in the living room, feet up, watching TV. He barely looked up, didn't say a word. But when David sat next to me, Mark stood, walked out without excuse. That became a pattern. Every time David walked into a room, Mark walked out. And every time Mark walked past me, I held my breath, afraid of what my face might betray. I started avoiding him. Wouldn't be in the kitchen when he was. Wouldn't let myself be in the same room alone with him. But my body remembered. My mind remembered. And the silence between us, it screamed. I'd be washing dishes and I'd feel his eyes on me. I'd look up. He'd look away. Every time. At night, I'd lie beside David, listening to him breathe, wondering if he could feel the distance. If he noticed how stiff I'd become. How quiet. Sometimes, I'd catch myself looking at Mark's door, half hoping he'd open it, half terrified he would. We never spoke of it again. Not one word. Not even a glance that said, "Do you remember?" But it lived between us. In every heartbeat. Every silence. Every time our fingers almost touched by accident. It was there, a secret so loud it made the rest of my life feel muted. I still don't know if it was love, or just escape. Maybe both. Maybe neither. What I do know is I was empty. And he filled something. Not permanently. Not cleanly. But just enough to make me forget the ache for a moment. And maybe that moment was all I wanted. All I could handle. But it didn't end the way it did in my head. There was no soft goodbye. No tearful apology. Just silence. A heavy, constant silence that followed me into every corner of this house. He never stopped. Not even when I started crying. Not loud tears. Just quiet ones. The kind you let fall when you're too tired to hold them back. He didn't say anything. Just held me. Like he thought that made it okay. And maybe I didn't stop him because a part of me wanted to be ruined.